20 minutes before I was supposed to give my husband a kidney, my mother-in-law locked the hospital room door, shoved nearly $10,000 into my lap, and told me to run. Not leave, not reconsider. Run. Take Lucy and go, Ruth whispered. Her face had gone so pale that for one strange second, I thought she might be the patient instead of me. I stared at the thick brown envelope in my hands. Cash, a prepaid phone, copies of my passport, Lucy's birth certificate, my driver's license, and our health insurance cards. There was even a spare key to a car I didn't recognize. I looked back at her. What is this? Ruth's fingers were trembling. In 7 years of marriage, I had never seen Ruth Carter tremble. I had seen her watch me cry without blinking. I had seen her tell me to stop being emotional after Daniel stayed out all night. I had seen her sip coffee while I sat across from her. 6 weeks postpartum, exhausted and terrified, my marriage was already falling apart. Ruth had always been controlled, cold, almost painfully calm. But that morning at Allegheny General Hospital, she looked terrified. Emily, she grabbed my wrist. Listen to me. Do not go through with the surgery. I pulled my hand back. What are you talking about? Daniel cannot know I told you. My stomach tightened. My husband is about to have a kidney transplant. I know. I'm the donor. I know. He could die without this. Her mouth twisted. Not quite a smile. Something closer to grief. And you may not be safe if you give it to him. I stared at her. You're insane. I wish I were. That was the moment everything changed. But to understand why I almost ignored her, why I almost handed the envelope back and walked willingly into the operating room, you have to understand something about my marriage. I had spent 7 years believing sacrifice was proof of love. Daniel Carter taught me that. His mother helped. And by the time I realized what both of them had done to me, I was already wearing a hospital bracelet with my name printed beside the words living donor. My name is Emily Carter. I was 29 years old, married for 7 years, and the mother of a 6-year-old girl named Lucy. We lived outside Pittsburgh in a house that looked from the street like proof that I had made good choices. Daniel had a respectable family, a successful father, a mother who volunteered at church fundraisers and never forgot a birthday. The Carters owned medical transport vans, rehabilitation centers, and elder care businesses all over western Pennsylvania. Frank Carter's picture had appeared in local newspapers more than once. Community leader donates to senior care program. Local business owner funds rehabilitation wing. People shook Frank's hand at charity dinners. They called Daniel lucky to have a father like him. They called me lucky too. For a long time I agreed. When I met Daniel, I was 21 and working in medical billing for a family practice in Bethel Park. I had my own apartment, a used Honda Civic, a retirement account with barely anything in it, but it was mine. Daniel used to tease me because I checked my bank balance twice before buying anything over $50. You know you're allowed to live a little, right? He said on our third date. I am living. You compare menu prices before ordering. That's called budgeting. He grinned. That's called trauma. I laughed. Back then, Daniel could make almost anything sound charming. He remembered how I took my coffee. He drove 40 minutes across town when my car battery died. When my mother was hospitalized with pneumonia, he sat beside me in the waiting room until 2 in the morning. He never raised his voice. That was important. I used to tell people that. Daniel never yells. I didn't understand yet that a man doesn't need to yell to control you. Sometimes all he needs is patience, a calm voice, a disappointed look, and enough time. The changes came slowly. After we married, Daniel suggested we combine finances. That's what married people do. I hesitated. He smiled and kissed my forehead. Do you think I'm going to steal from you? No. Then what are you worried about? I felt foolish. We combined our checking accounts. A year later, I got pregnant with Lucy. When maternity leave ended, I told Daniel I planned to go back to work. He frowned. You don't have to. I want to. Daycare will eat half your paycheck. Not half. Close enough. I folded a tiny onesie and said, I like working. Daniel's expression changed. Not angry. Hurt. So you'd rather leave our daughter with strangers? That's not what I said. I'm just asking. No, you're not. He let out a long breath. Emily, why does everything have to become a fight? That sentence followed me for years. Why does everything have to become a fight? If I wanted to visit Hannah on Saturday instead of attending dinner with Frank and Ruth, I was making things difficult. If I asked why Daniel spent $4,000 without telling me, I was turning money into a fight. If I said I wanted to go back to work, I was questioning his ability to provide. Eventually, I stayed home. First, I told myself it was temporary. Then Lucy turned 1. Then 2. Then 3. Every time I mentioned working again, Daniel had a reason it wasn't the right time. Lucy needs consistency. My schedule is crazy right now. Dad may need me more at the company. What if you get a job and then she starts having problems at school? By the time Lucy started kindergarten, I no longer had a separate bank account. The Honda was gone. Daniel replaced it with an SUV registered through one of the Carter companies because, according to him, the tax setup made more sense. My credit card was attached to our shared account. He got alerts for large purchases. Once, I spent $180 replacing winter coats for Lucy and me. Daniel called before I even reached the parking lot. $180 at Target? I froze. Yes. For what? Coats. You could have mentioned it. They were coats, Daniel. I'm not saying you can't buy things. Sounds like you are. He went quiet. Then came the sigh. Why are you making me sound controlling? I apologized. That's the part one hates remembering most. I apologized. Ruth never helped. The first time I told her Daniel checked our spending, she barely looked up from her coffee. Frank handled all the money too. That didn't bother you? We were married. That doesn't answer my question. She stared at me for a moment. Then she said, marriage means giving up some independence. I remember thinking, thank God Hannah isn't here. My older sister would have thrown the coffee. Hannah had disliked Daniel almost from the beginning. Not because he was rude to her. Daniel was never rude when other people were watching. That was his gift. He remembered Hannah's birthday, asked about her business, offered to help when her furnace broke. Then afterward in the car he'd say, your sister has a lot of opinions about our marriage. She worries about me. She doesn't respect boundaries. She barely said anything. Daniel glanced at me. That's because you don't notice it anymore. Eventually I saw Hannah less. Not because Daniel forbid it. He never had to. He just made every visit expensive emotionally. If I came home after spending the afternoon with her, he'd be quiet. If I asked what was wrong, he'd say nothing. If I pressed, he'd say, I just thought Sunday was family time. We are family. You know what I mean? After enough conversations like that, staying home became easier. Then Daniel got sick. It started with exhaustion. He was 31 and suddenly falling asleep on the couch at 7:30. Then came swelling in his ankles. Nausea. Blood tests. More blood tests. A nephrologist. The word kidney failure landed in our kitchen like a bomb. Daniel sat at the table with both hands over his face. I stood beside him, not knowing whether to touch him. Finally he looked up. His eyes were red. I don't want Lucy growing up without a dad. Every wall I had built around myself disappeared. I sat beside him. You're not going anywhere. You don't know that. Then we fight. He laughed bitterly. With what? With everything. He looked at me for a long time. Then he reached for my hand. That night, for the first time in months, we slept holding each other. His illness changed him. Or at least I thought it did. He became softer, more vulnerable. He apologized for being distracted. He thanked me for driving him to dialysis. Once, after a particularly bad treatment, he leaned his head back against the passenger seat and whispered, I know I haven't made things easy for you. I almost cried. Daniel. No. I mean it. I looked at him. He turned his face toward me. If I get through this, I want us to start over. Those words became my weakness. Start over. I wanted them so badly I would have believed almost anything. When the doctors began discussing living donation, I volunteered for testing. Hannah found out 2 days later. She showed up at my house carrying takeout in anger. You're getting tested? I already did. For Daniel? Yes. She set the food on the counter too hard. Emily. What? Have you talked to an independent donor advocate? The hospital has one. That's not what I asked. I crossed my arms. He's my husband. Hannah stared at me. That wasn't what I asked either. I felt irritation rise. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Yes. She lowered her voice. If you and Daniel got divorced tomorrow, would you still give him a kidney? I snapped, we're not getting divorced. That's not my question. You always do this. Do what? Act like you know my marriage better than I do. Hannah's face changed. She looked hurt, but she didn't back down. I know you ask permission before spending your own money. That's not true. I know you stopped working because he wanted you to. We agreed. I know every time you and I make plans, you check his schedule first. We have a child. And I know you defend him before I even finish a sentence. I grabbed the takeout bag. If you came here to insult my husband, you can leave. Hannah stared at me for several seconds. Then she nodded. Okay. I expected her to argue. She didn't. That somehow made me angrier. At the door she turned. I hope I'm wrong. You are. I really hope I am. The testing took weeks. Blood work, scans, psychological evaluation, meetings with the transplant team. At one appointment, a woman named Karen, my independent living donor coordinator, closed the office door after Daniel left. She spoke gently. Emily, I need you to understand something. I understand the risks. I mean consent. I frowned. She folded her hands. You can change your mind at any time. I know. Even on the morning of surgery. I'm not going to. That may be true. But if you do, we can tell the recipient that the donation cannot proceed for medical reasons. You do not owe anyone an explanation. I laughed nervously. Daniel would never force me. Karen didn't smile. I didn't say he would. I felt embarrassed. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. She slid a card toward me. Just remember this. Your body is not an obligation. At the time, I thought the sentence was overly dramatic. Months later, I would remember every word. When the call came that I was a compatible donor, Daniel cried. Actually cried. He pulled me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. You're saving my life. Lucy was standing beside us. She hugged my waist. Mommy's saving Daddy? Daniel looked down at her and smiled. Yes, baby. Mommy's our hero. I wish I could explain how powerful those words were. For years, I had felt like the problem in my own home. Too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional, too suspicious. And suddenly I was the hero. Frank took over the logistics. He knew hospital administrators, insurance people, people at the rehab center. You won't need to worry about anything, he told me. Daniel would recover in the transplant unit. I would spend several days in the hospital, then be transferred if needed to a private rehabilitation program connected to one of the Carter facilities. I remember blinking. A rehab center? Just for a little while, Daniel said. I thought I could recover at home. Frank smiled. This is better. I'd rather be with Lucy. Ruth, sitting across from me, suddenly looked up. For 1 second, our eyes met. Something passed across her face. Then it disappeared. Frank said, You'll be in no condition to chase a 6-year-old around. Daniel squeezed my hand. Let people take care of you for once. I let it go. Again. The night before surgery, Ruth came to our house alone. That was unusual. Frank and Ruth moved as a pair. Always. She stood in the kitchen while Daniel packed an overnight bag. Lucy was upstairs. Ruth watched me fold sweatpants into a small suitcase. Then she asked, Did Daniel increase your life insurance? I stopped. What? Daniel walked in. Mom. Ruth looked at him. He smiled, but his eyes sharpened. What are you talking about? She shook her head. Nothing. Daniel laughed. Mom's been paranoid lately. Ruth looked at me again. For the first time, I noticed how tired she looked. Not old. Tired. There's a difference. When she left, I walked her to the door. She put one hand on the handle. Get some sleep, she said. That's it? She glanced toward the kitchen, where Daniel was standing with his back to us. Then she whispered, Pay attention tomorrow. To what? But she was already gone. The next morning, Daniel was almost cheerful. He kissed Lucy goodbye at Hannah's house and promised her ice cream when we both came home. At the hospital, he joked with the nurses. He held my hand while they checked my for. When I started crying, he leaned over me. Hey, I'm fine. You're scared. A little. He kissed my forehead. When you wake up, this nightmare is over. I looked at him. You mean it? What? About us. His expression softened. Of course I do. Starting over. Emily. He smiled. You're giving me a kidney. If that doesn't earn us a second chance, I don't know what does. At the time I thought it was sweet. Later I would hear that sentence differently. Earn us a second chance. As if my body had become currency. A staff member came in and told Daniel there was an issue with the final insurance authorization, and someone from financial services needed him downstairs. Daniel groaned. Seriously? It should only take a few minutes. He squeezed my hand. Don't let them start without me. I smiled. You're not exactly invited into the operating room. You know what I mean. Then he left. Ruth appeared less than 5 minutes later. She closed the door, locked it, and handed me the envelope. That brought us back to the moment when my entire life started splitting in two. The life I thought I had, and the one everyone else seemed to know about except me. I looked at the cash again. This is crazy. I know. Did Frank give you this? No. Daniel? No. Then where did it come from? My account. I almost laughed. You have an account? Ruth flinched. That was when I understood I had accidentally hit something real. She swallowed. One Frank doesn't know about.
Ist daher.
Why? Because every woman should have somewhere to go. My anger rose immediately. Interesting advice from you. I know. You spent 7 years telling me women should stay. Her eyes filled. I know. You told me marriage meant giving up independence. I know. You watched Daniel control everything I did. Her voice broke. I know. That stopped me. Ruth Carter did not break. Not in front of me. Not ever. I lowered my voice. Why are you doing this? She looked toward the door, then back at me. Because I waited too long. For what? To admit what my son became. A chill went through me. No, Emily. No. I pushed the envelope toward her. Daniel is sick. He's scared. He has made mistakes, but he is not whatever you're trying to say. Ruth grabbed the envelope and shoved it back. Take it. I don't want your money. You will. I have a husband. Her face changed. That's the problem. I stood so fast my foreline pulled. Get out. Emily, get out. She stepped closer. Daniel has been making arrangements for after your surgery. Of course he has. Not the kind you think. What does that mean? She opened her mouth, closed it. I could see panic fighting with habit. 30 years of silence, though I didn't know that yet. Finally she said, if you stay here, you may wake up without control of your money.
Ist daher.
She continued, without control of where you recover. My heart started pounding. And if things go the way Frank wants. She stopped. What? Ruth's lips trembled. You may wake up without Lucy. For 1 second I couldn't breathe. Don't say her name. Listen to me. Don't you dare use my daughter to scare me. I'm trying to save you. I laughed once. Sharp and ugly. You? Her eyes closed. I deserve that. You've never once been on my side. I know. You don't even like me. Ruth looked straight at me. That has nothing to do with whether you deserve to survive this family. The word survive made my stomach turn. I whispered, are you saying Daniel wants me dead? Ruth looked at me for a long time. Then she said the sentence I would hear in my head for months afterward. I'm saying Daniel won't let you come home the way you think he will. Footsteps sounded outside. Ruth's face drained of color. She shoved the prepaid phone into my hand. Staff stairwell. End of the hall. Go down 2 floors. Follow the service corridor. And use the rear exit. I didn't move. Who's outside? I don't know. Ruth, go. Why should I trust you? The footsteps stopped directly outside my room. Someone touched the handle. Ruth looked at me. You shouldn't. The handle moved again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But if I'm wrong, you can hate me tomorrow. She pressed the car key into my palm. If I'm right, tomorrow may be too late. I looked at the locked door. Then at the envelope. Then at Ruth. 7 years earlier, I had walked into the Carter family believing marriage meant choosing the same person every day. That morning, for the first time, I chose myself. I pulled off the hospital blanket, grabbed my clothes, and headed for the staff door. I had no idea that before I made it out of the hospital, I would see my husband standing beside his father while his mother begged to be released. I had no idea another woman would step out of Daniel's car carrying a $2 million insurance policy with my name on it. And I had no idea that when Daniel kissed her, I would finally understand the truth. I thought I had come to the hospital to save my husband's life. I was wrong. By the end of that day, I would realize the person who needed saving was me. I almost turned back 3 times before I reached the service stairwell. The first time was when I heard a nurse laughing somewhere behind me. The sound was so normal that it made Ruth's warning feel ridiculous. People were starting their shifts. Phones were ringing. Doctors were moving between rooms. Somewhere in that hospital, someone was getting good news and someone else was getting bad news. And I was sneaking away from a kidney donation because my mother-in-law had handed me cash and told me my husband might not let me come home. It sounded insane. By the second flight of stairs, I had convinced myself Ruth was having some kind of breakdown. By the third, I had my phone in my hand. Daniel's name was at the top of the screen. I could call him. I could say, "Your mother is frightening me. Tell me what's going on." That was what I had always done. Ask Daniel. Wait for Daniel. Let Daniel explain. My thumb hovered over his name. Then I heard Karen's voice in my head. "Your body is not an obligation." I put the phone away. For once I kept walking. The service corridor led toward the rear loading area. I was still in hospital socks, carrying my clothes under one arm and Ruth's envelope under the other. My hands felt numb. I found a small employee restroom, locked myself inside, and changed. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My hair was pulled back badly. My face was pale. The adhesive from the floor tugged at my skin. I looked like someone escaping something. That frightened me more than Ruth's words had. I whispered to my reflection, "You're being dramatic." It came out in Daniel's voice. I hated that. I took the prepaid phone from the envelope. There were no contacts saved. No messages. Just a single piece of paper wrapped around it with Ruth's handwriting. "Do not use your regular phone unless you have to." I stared at the sentence. Then I shoved both phones into my purse and left. I was almost at the rear exit when I heard Ruth shout, "Frank, let go of me." I stopped so suddenly my shoulder hit the wall. For 1 second I thought I had imagined it. Then I heard Frank. His voice was low and hard. "Get in the van." My heart started pounding. I moved closer to the loading area but stayed behind a concrete corner. Ruth was maybe 30 feet away. Frank had one hand wrapped around her upper arm. She was trying to pull free. I had never seen Frank touch her like that. Not once. In public, he opened doors for her, put his hand at the small of her back, called her my better half at charity dinners. Now his fingers were digging into her coat. "Stop," Ruth said. Frank leaned toward her. "You've already embarrassed yourself enough." I said, "Let go." Then Daniel stepped into view. My husband. He looked irritated, not worried, not confused. I waited for him to say something. "Mom, are you okay?" "Dad, let her go." Anything. Instead, Daniel looked directly at Ruth and asked, "How much did you tell Emily?" Everything inside me went still. Ruth looked at him. Her mouth opened, but she didn't answer. Daniel's face tightened. "Mom." Frank shook her once. "Answer him." Ruth's voice was quiet. "Enough." Daniel swore under his breath. He turned away and dragged both hands over his face. "You had one job." My knees nearly gave out. One job. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew no innocent explanation started with those words. Frank said, "She's confused." "I'm not confused," Ruth snapped. He pulled her closer to the Carter medical transport van. "Then stop acting like a lunatic." I took out my phone. My normal one. For a second my fingers wouldn't work. Then I opened the camera. I started recording. I didn't know what I planned to do with the video. I only knew I needed proof. Proof that this moment had happened. Proof that Daniel's expression was not concern. Proof that Frank was holding Ruth against her will. Proof maybe that I wasn't losing my mind. Then another car door opened. A woman stepped out. Melissa Grant. I knew her immediately. Daniel's legal counsel. 34. Polished. Smart. Always perfectly composed. She had been in my home for dinner twice. She had brought Lucy a birthday gift. Once, after I asked Daniel why Melissa texted him after 11 at night, he laughed. "She works constantly. That's who she is." I said, "She sends you heart emojis." He rolled his eyes. "Emily, come on. I'm asking a question." "She's being friendly." "She's very friendly." Daniel had stared at me for a long time. Then he said, "Do you realize how insecure this makes you sound?" I apologized. Again. Now Melissa was walking toward him with a file folder in her hand. She looked at Ruth. "What happened?" Daniel gave her a hard look. "What do you think?" Melissa's expression changed. "She told her?" "I don't know." Frank said, "We're handling it." Melissa lowered her voice. "What if Emily backs out?" My stomach dropped. Daniel looked toward the hospital. "She won't." Melissa crossed her arms. "You sound very sure." Daniel gave a short laugh. "She spent 7 years proving she'll do anything to keep this family together." I stopped breathing. He said it casually, almost proudly, like my loyalty was a weakness he had successfully measured. Melissa looked uncomfortable. "Daniel." "What?" "This wasn't supposed to get messy." "It isn't messy. Your mother just." My mother panicked. Ruth stared at him. "No," she said. I finally stopped panicking. Daniel's jaw tightened. Mom, don't do this. Frank pulled Ruth toward the van again. This time she stumbled. My first instinct was to run out. I almost did. I wanted to scream at Frank. I wanted to slap Daniel. I wanted to grab Ruth and get her away from them. Then Melissa opened the folder. A gust of wind lifted several pages. One flipped backward. I saw my name, Emily Carter. I moved the phone closer. I couldn't read everything from where I was standing, but I could read one line. Life insurance benefit, $2 million. My mouth went dry. I stared at it. $2 million. Daniel had told me our life insurance policies were standard. Nothing crazy, he said. Just enough to cover the mortgage and take care of Lucy. I remembered signing paperwork at our kitchen counter months earlier. There had been a stack. Daniel pointed to the lines. Here too. An initial there. I barely read it. Why would I? He was my husband. Melissa quickly pulled the papers back into place. Not here, she said. Daniel looked at her. You brought them. You asked me to. Frank's grip tightened on Ruth. Enough. Get in the van. Ruth looked toward the hospital building. For one terrifying second I thought she saw me. Her eyes stopped near the corner where I was hiding. She didn't react. That told me everything. She knew I was there. Or hoped I was. And she was pretending not to see me. Melissa touched Daniel's arm. What do we do if she withdrew consent? Daniel looked down at her. We find her. And then? His expression hardened. Then I talked to my wife. Melissa held his gaze. You think she'll listen? Daniel smiled. She always does. I felt something break inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet final crack. Then Daniel put one hand around Melissa's waist. My brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Melissa looked up at him. Not now. Daniel said, relax. And kissed her. I had imagined this moment before. Not this exact moment, but some version of it. A lipstick mark. A hotel receipt. A text message too intimate to explain. I always assumed that if I ever caught Daniel cheating, I would lose control. I would scream, cry, demand answers, throw something, ask how long, ask why, ask if he loved her. Instead, I stood behind a hospital wall and kept recording. That was all. I watched my husband kiss another woman while his father forced his mother toward a van, and a $2 million insurance policy with my name on it sat in Melissa's hand. And I didn't cry. Not yet. I finally understood something I should have learned years ago. Daniel was best when I reacted. When I cried, he called me emotional. When I yelled, he called me unstable. When I accused him, he asked why I didn't trust him. Every reaction gave him something to use, so I gave him nothing. I ended the recording, turned around, and walked away. My hands didn't start shaking until I reached the parking area. The spare key Ruth gave me had a small Ford logo. I pressed the button. A dark blue Escape flashed its lights 2 rows away. I ran to it. Once inside, I locked the doors and dropped the envelope on the passenger seat. My breathing came too fast.
No, iuis parat.
Then louder. No. I wanted to call Hannah. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to drive straight back and get Ruth. But Lucy came first. Lucy. The thought of my daughter cleared everything else out of my head. I pulled out my regular phone. There were 6 missed calls from Daniel. 2 from the hospital. 1 from Frank. 3 texts. Daniel. Where are you? Daniel. Emily, call me. Daniel. The surgical team is looking for you. Another message appeared while I watched. Daniel, this is not funny. My fear turned into anger. Not funny. I nearly laughed. Instead, I called Karen. She answered on the second ring. Emily, I'm not doing the surgery. There was a pause. Then her voice became calm and professional. Okay, that was it. Okay, no guilt, no pressure. I gripped the steering wheel.
I'm sorry.
You do not need to apologize. My husband needs the transplant. I understand. He may say I'm confused. Emily, I closed my eyes. You are allowed to withdraw consent. My throat tightened. Can you put that in my chart? It already is. What? Your request is enough. I almost cried then. Not because I was sad. Because somebody had believed me without making me prove anything. Karen continued, are you safe? I looked back toward the hospital. I don't know. Do you need security? Not yet. If that changes, call the hospital or 911. I swallowed. Thank you. Emily? Yes. Do not come back because someone pressures you. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I won't. I hung up. Daniel called immediately. I stared at his name. Decline. He called again. Decline. Then Frank. Decline. Then Melissa. That one almost made me laugh. I drove to Hannah's. Lucy was sitting at the kitchen table coloring when I walked in. She looked up and smiled. Mommy. Then her smile disappeared. Why are you here? Hannah came out from the hallway. Her face went white. Emily? Lucy looked between us. Did the doctors already fix Daddy? I couldn't answer. Hannah moved quickly. Lucy, sweetheart, can you go upstairs and pick a movie? But, please. Lucy frowned. Is Mommy sick? I forced a smile. I'm okay, baby. You promise? My chest hurt. Promise. She studied me for another second, then went upstairs. The second she was gone, Hannah grabbed my shoulders. What happened? I put my phone on the kitchen table. I need you to watch something. She stared at me. Emily, you're scaring me. Watch. I played the video. Hannah didn't speak. Not when Frank grabbed Ruth. Not when Daniel asked how much she told me. Not when Melissa stepped out. But when the wind flipped the insurance document and Daniel kissed Melissa, Hannah covered her mouth. Oh my God. I stopped the video. Hannah looked at me. 2 million. Think so. Did you know? No. Did you sign that? I signed insurance paperwork. Her face tightened. Of course you did. I flinched. She immediately shook her head. No. Sorry. That came out wrong. No, it didn't. Emily. I signed whatever he put in front of me. Hannah's eyes filled. Because he was your husband. I looked away. Because I was stupid. No. I gave him everything. Stop. My job. My money. Stop. She took my hands. You can fall apart later. That snapped me back. Lucy. Yes. And Ruth. Hannah stiffened. What about Ruth? Frank put her in that van. Then call the police. I don't know where they took her. Still call. I will. Hannah stepped back. Then she noticed the envelope. What is that? Ruth gave it to me. I emptied it onto the table. Cash. Documents. Phone. Keys. Hannah stared. She planned this. Yes. How long? I don't know. My regular phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel. Daniel. Hannah is feeding your paranoia. Come home and we can fix this. Another. Daniel. You are taking Lucy away from her sick father. Another. Daniel. If you keep acting like this, people are going to start questioning whether you're okay. Hannah read them over my shoulder. Her face changed. That son of a bitch. I felt cold. He's already doing it. What? Making me crazy. Daniel called again. This time Hannah reached for the phone. I stopped her. No. You should block him. Not yet. Why? Because I want everything he sends. Hannah looked at me. For the first time that day, I saw surprise in her face. Maybe she heard it too. Something different in my voice. I wasn't asking Daniel to explain. I was collecting what he gave me. Then the prepaid phone rang. We both froze. No name. Just a number. I answered carefully. Hello? A man's voice said, who is this? I could ask you the same thing. Silence. Then he said, how did you get this phone? Ruth Carter gave it to me. The line went dead quiet. I looked at Hannah. Finally the man asked, is Ruth alive? Every hair on my arms rose. She was when I saw her. Where? Allegheny General. Frank put her into one of the Carter medical transport vans. The man cursed. Who are you? I took a breath. Emily Carter. Another silence. Longer this time. Daniel's wife? Yes. He let out a slow breath. Jesus. What? Did Ruth give you a message? I remembered the folded note around the phone. Picked it up. Yes. What does it say? I read it. Ask for Thomas Reed. Tell him Ruth Carter finally chose door number 3. The man didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said, I'm Thomas Reed. Hannah leaned closer. I put the call on speaker. I asked, what is door number 3? Thomas ignored the question. Do not use your normal phone to call me again. Why? Do not go home. I wasn't planning to. Do not use any Carter-owned vehicle. I looked through the kitchen window at the Ford outside. My mother-in-law gave me a car. Good. What is going on? Thomas breathed out. I need to see what Ruth gave you. She gave me cash and copies of documents. Anything else? No. Then she didn't have time. Time for what? He went quiet again. I was getting angry. Mr. Reed, my husband, was supposed to receive my kidney this morning. His mother told me to run. I just watched his father force her into a van while my husband stood there with his mistress and a $2 million policy on my life. Hannah put a hand on my arm. I continued. So I'm done with people giving me half a sentence and expecting me to obey. Tell me what the hell is happening. Thomas was silent. Then his voice softened. Fair enough. I waited. He said, I investigated Frank Carter 14 years ago. For what? Insurance fraud. My stomach tightened. That's it? No. What else? Fraudulent medical transport claims, forged authorizations, elder financial exploitation, money laundering through related care facilities. Hannah's eyes widened. I whispered, Daniel knows? I don't know how much he knew 14 years ago. And now? Thomas sighed. Now I think the better question is how much of it he learned. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. This has nothing to do with me. Thomas's answer came immediately. That's where you're wrong. I looked at the $2 million insurance policy frozen on my phone screen. What does any of this have to do with my marriage? Thomas said, Frank Carter has been controlling people through money, medical paperwork, and family leverage for more than 30 years. I felt sick. And Ruth? She tried to leave him twice. I stared at the phone. What? Both times she came back. Why? Daniel. The room went silent. Thomas continued. Frank used custody threats the first time. Financial pressure the second. After that, Ruth stopped trying to leave and started documenting things instead. I sank into a chair. All I could hear was Ruth saying the same sentence she had said to me for years. Sometimes women endure things for the sake of the family. I had always thought she was judging me. What if she had been repeating the rules that kept her alive? Hannah spoke first. Why didn't she go to police? She tried. What happened? Evidence disappeared. Employees changed statements. Ruth backed out. So Frank scared her. Yes. I thought of Daniel asking, how much did you tell Emily? My voice came out small. And door number 3? Thomas paused. The first 2 times Ruth contacted me, she changed her mind. And this time she told me that if she ever said door number 3, it meant she was done protecting Frank. I swallowed. And Daniel? Thomas did not answer immediately. That scared me more than if he had. Finally he said, she told me Daniel was becoming his father. My eyes filled. I hated that they did. I wiped them quickly. No. Hannah looked at me. I shook my head. No. Daniel is controlling. He cheated. He lied. But this, I couldn't finish. Thomas said, you don't have to decide what you believe tonight. I do if Ruth is in danger. That surprised him. I could hear it. You're going after her? I'm not leaving her with Frank. Hannah stood. Emily. I looked at her. She got me out. She also treated you like hell for 7 years. I know. She told you to stay with him. I know. She watched him control you. I know. Hannah stared at me. Then I said the only thing that mattered. But today she treated me like a daughter. My voice broke. And I left her there. Hannah's expression changed. I continued. I got Lucy out. I'm safe. Ruth isn't. Thomas said quietly, Emily, if Frank realizes she gave you anything, he already knows. Then she may be in more danger than you understand. I looked at the video again. Frank's hand around Ruth's arm. Daniel watching. Melissa holding my insurance documents. Then I thought about the old Ruth. The cold one. The woman who told me to endure. For 7 years I had believed she was one of the people keeping me trapped. Maybe she had been. Maybe both things could be true. Maybe she had hurt me. And maybe today she had spent everything she had left trying to get me out. I picked up the prepaid phone. Tell me where to meet you. Thomas hesitated, then gave me an address. Before he hung up, I asked one more question. Mr. Reed? Yes. You said Frank has been doing this for 30 years. Longer. And you think Daniel learned from him? I think Daniel grew up believing control was what powerful men called love. I closed my eyes. Thomas continued. Emily, your husband didn't invent what happened to you. My fingers tightened around the phone. He inherited it. After the call ended, Hannah stood across from me with both hands on the table. You cannot go alone. I know. You cannot go near Daniel. I know. You cannot decide that saving Ruth means sacrificing yourself again. That one stopped me. She saw it. Her voice softened. You hear me? I nodded. Yes. Upstairs, Lucy laughed at something on television. The sound almost destroyed me. Daniel had used her for years without me noticing. Not openly. Not cruelly. Just enough. Lucy needs you home. Lucy needs stability. Lucy needs her father. Every sentence had sounded like love. Now I wondered how many had been chains. My regular phone buzzed. One final message from Daniel. Daniel, come back before this becomes something you can't fix. I stared at it. Then I took a screenshot. For 7 years that message would have terrified me. Not because he threatened me. Daniel was smarter than that. He made everything sound like a warning from someone who knew better. Come back. Calm down. Don't make this worse. Let me fix it. This time I put the phone down. I looked at Hannah. I'm not going back to fix my marriage. She said nothing. I'm going back for Ruth. And for the first time since I ran out of that hospital, I knew exactly what I was doing. I was not running from the Carter family anymore. I was going to find out what they had been hiding, and then I was going to bring Ruth out with me. Thomas Reed chose a diner 20 minutes outside Pittsburgh, not because he liked the food, because, according to him, Frank Carter hated places where he couldn't control who was sitting at the next table. I arrived with Hannah. Thomas was already there. He was older than I expected, maybe late 60s, with silver hair, a lined face, and the kind of eyes that made me feel like he had already noticed everything I was trying to hide. He didn't stand when we approached. He looked at me first, then Hannah, then the prepaid phone in my hand. You used that to call me? Yes, good. Hannah sat down beside me. I stayed standing. You said you investigated Frank. I did. You said Ruth tried to leave him twice. She did. And you said Daniel learned from him. Thomas nodded once. I said I believe he did. I crossed my arms. I don't want beliefs. His expression didn't change. Then sit down, Emily. I hated how calm he was. I hated calm men at that point. But I sat. Thomas reached into a worn leather folder and pulled out several photocopies. The first was a billing statement. The second was a transportation record. The third had Frank Carter's company letterhead across the top. I looked at him. What am I supposed to see? Look at the dates. I did. A patient named Eleanor Whitcomb had been billed for non-emergency medical transport on 4 separate days. Thomas tapped one line. She was in Florida with her daughter on 2 of those dates. I frowned. He showed me another. Walter Keene. Rehab services billed for 6 weeks. So, he died after week 2. My stomach turned. Hannah leaned closer. You're serious? Thomas looked at her. I don't joke about dead patients. He pulled out more pages. Duplicate charges. Signed authorizations. Transfers between Carter-owned facilities. I knew enough from my old medical billing work to recognize how ugly it looked. This isn't sloppy bookkeeping, I said. No, this was deliberate. Yes. I looked up. How long? We proved patterns going back more than 20 years. I suspect longer. And nobody stopped him? Thomas gave me a tired look. We tried. I heard the bitterness there. What happened? Employees changed statements. One bookkeeper disappeared for 6 months. Then came back saying she had misunderstood everything. A transport driver who agreed to testify suddenly decided he had memory problems. Hannah said Frank paid them? Some. And the others? Thomas's jaw tightened. Some were scared. I thought of Ruth in Frank's grip. She was one of them. Thomas looked at me. Yes. I leaned back. Tell me everything. He studied my face for a moment. Ruth first contacted me 16 years ago. I blinked. 16? Anonymous call. She wouldn't give me her name. Just said her husband was moving patient money through companies that didn't exist. What happened? She hung up. That's it? She called again 3 days later. And? She gave me 2 company names. Thomas pushed another paper toward me. Both were shell entities tied to Carter businesses. I stared at it. Why didn't she testify? Because Frank found out she had been asking questions. My fingers went cold. How? We never knew. Thomas folded his hands. After that, Ruth stopped answering my calls. Hannah asked, was that door number 1? Thomas nodded. Yes. I swallowed. And door number 2? 6 years later. That would have been around the time Daniel and I were newly married. I felt sick. What happened then? Ruth called me from a payphone. She said she was leaving Frank. I stared at him. She actually tried? She packed a bag. Had a motel reservation. Opened a separate bank account. I thought about the secret account she had mentioned at the hospital. Maybe she had been saving in hidden places for years. Thomas continued. She made it as far as Washington County. What stopped her? Daniel. I stiffened. What do you mean? Frank told her Daniel had signed a statement saying she was mentally unstable. No, Daniel was 26. My throat tightened. Thomas's voice stayed even. He didn't write the statement himself. Frank's attorney prepared it. Daniel signed it.
Hannah Mutered, Jesus.
I shook my head. No, maybe he didn't know what it was. Thomas gave me a look. Emily, I hated that look too. The one people give when they know you are defending someone out of habit. He could have been manipulated, I said. He probably was. That answer stopped me. Thomas continued, but manipulated people still make choices. I looked down. He was right. I didn't want him to be. Thomas leaned back. Frank told Ruth that if she left, he would prove she was mentally unstable, freeze her access to family money, and make sure Daniel never spoke to her again. I whispered so she went back. Yes, she stayed for Daniel. Yes, and Daniel helped Frank keep her there. Thomas didn't answer. He didn't have to. I pressed my hands together to stop them shaking. Suddenly every conversation with Ruth looked different. Marriage means giving up some independence. Sometimes women come second. Women endure things for the sake of family. I had thought she was teaching me how to be a Carter wife. Maybe she had been repeating the rules she had used to survive being one. That did not make me forgive her. If anything, it made me angrier. She knew. Thomas frowned. She knew what? I looked straight at him. She knew what it felt like. He was quiet. She knew what it was like to have money controlled, to have people question your sanity, to be told you'd lose your child if you left. My voice rose, and she still watched Daniel do it to me. Hannah touched my arm. I pulled away. No, I'm not going to make her into a saint because she finally did one brave thing. Thomas nodded. You shouldn't. That surprised me. I stared at him. He continued. Ruth made choices too. I swallowed. She hurt me. Yes. She told me to stay. Yes. She helped normalize all of it. Yes. I looked away. Thomas's voice softened. People can be victims and still hurt other people. I closed my eyes. That was the first thing anyone said that made sense. Not innocent. Not evil. Both. Maybe all of us were more complicated than the roles we had assigned each other. Hannah asked, "Where's Ruth now?" Thomas's face changed. I think Frank took her to Westbridge Recovery. My stomach dropped. Carter Westbridge? Yes. I knew the place. One of the family's private rehabilitation facilities outside Bridgeville. Daniel had taken me there once for a fundraising event. Frank had introduced me to donors in the lobby. Ruth had stood beside him wearing pearls. I had thought she looked elegant. Now I wondered if she had simply looked trapped. Why would he take her there? I asked. Thomas pulled out another document. Because the Carters have used temporary observation before. Hannah frowned. For patients? For family members too. I looked at him. What does that mean? It means if Ruth appears agitated, confused, or emotionally unstable, they can frame an involuntary evaluation as concern. You can't just lock someone up because their husband says so. No, then. But if a physician on staff believes she is a danger to herself or others, they can hold her temporarily for evaluation. My blood went cold. And Frank knows the staff. Most of them. I stood. We're going there. Thomas didn't move. No. I stared at him. No. You do not storm into a Carter facility without a plan. She could be trapped there. I know. Then move. He held up one hand. Sit down. I almost laughed. You really need to stop telling me to sit down. For the first time, Thomas almost smiled. Fair. He stood instead. Then he pulled another paper from his folder. Ruth signed this 3 months ago. I took it. It was a notarized statement. My eyes moved quickly. Ruth had declared that if she were ever placed in any Carter-affiliated medical or rehabilitation facility against her express wishes, Thomas Reed and an attorney named Rebecca Shaw were authorized to raise immediate concerns regarding coercion. I stared at him. She planned this 3 months ago? Longer probably. Why didn't she tell me? Thomas gave me a sharp look. Would you have believed her? I opened my mouth, then closed it. No, I would not have. If Ruth had told me 3 months earlier that Daniel and Frank were planning to use my surgery against me, I would have called Daniel immediately, and he would have explained it. Calmly. Perfectly. I hated how well they knew me. Thomas checked his watch. I've already called Rebecca. Who is she? Family law attorney. Ruth contacted her once. Hannah said, can she get Ruth out? If Ruth wants out and they're holding her improperly, yes. But we need law enforcement there too. I looked at Thomas. Do it. He did. An hour later, the three of us were in the parking lot outside Westbridge Recovery with Rebecca Shaw and 2 county deputies. Rebecca was in her late 40s, composed without being cold. She looked at me once and said, "You're Emily?" "Yes." "Ruth's daughter-in-law?" "Yes." "Are you willing to make a statement about what you saw at the hospital?" "Yes." "Good." No sympathy speech. No questions about my marriage. I liked her immediately. We walked inside. A receptionist smiled. "Can I help you?" Rebecca placed her card on the desk. "We're here to see Ruth Carter." The receptionist's smile faded. "I'm sorry, she isn't receiving visitors." Rebecca didn't blink. "Is she here voluntarily?" "I'm not able to discuss patient information." "Then ask her if she wants to see me." "I can't." Rebecca leaned slightly forward. "If Mrs. Carter is a voluntary patient, she can refuse us herself." The receptionist looked toward a hallway. A man in a white coat appeared a few minutes later. Dr. Kevin Sloan. I had met him before. At a Carter Christmas party. He recognized me immediately. "Emily?" I said nothing. His face tightened. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca answered. "Seeing Ruth Carter." Dr. Sloan sighed. "Ruth has been under tremendous emotional strain." My skin crawled. There it was. The same language Daniel used about me. Emotional. Unstable. Overwhelmed. Rebecca asked, "Did she consent to admission?" Dr. Sloan hesitated. "She was brought in by family." "That is not what I asked." A deputy stepped closer. Dr. Sloan's expression changed. She was distressed. Rebecca said, "Bring her out." He stared at her. "I can't just." "Then explain to these deputies under what legal authority you are preventing an adult woman from leaving." That ended the discussion. Ruth appeared 10 minutes later. The second I saw her, my anger disappeared under something worse. Her hair was messy. There was a red mark near her wrist. She looked exhausted, but she was standing. And when she saw me, her face crumpled. "Emily." I crossed the room. She reached for me. I stopped before she could touch me. Her hands fell. "You came back." "Yes." Frank's voice came from behind her. "She doesn't belong here." I turned. Frank Carter strode toward us with Daniel beside him. My heart slammed against my ribs. Daniel looked terrible. Pale. Furious. Scared. For half a second, the old reflex returned. I wanted to ask if he was okay. I hated myself for it. Then he looked at me and snapped, "What the hell are you doing?" There he was. Not the sick husband. Not the frightened patient. The man from behind the hospital. I looked him in the eye. "For the first time in 7 years, I think I know." His jaw tightened. "Emily, this is insane." Rebecca stepped between us. "Do not speak to my client that way." Daniel looked at her. "Your client?" "Yes." I had not technically hired Rebecca yet. She didn't care. Neither did I. Frank pointed at Ruth. "She needs treatment." Ruth's face changed. "No." Frank stared at her. "You're confused." "No." "You've been upset for weeks." "No." "You are not thinking clearly." Ruth took one breath. Then another. And for the first time since I had known her, she raised her voice at her husband. I said no. The room went silent. Frank's face hardened. He looked almost offended, as though she had broken a rule more sacred than law. He stepped toward her. The deputy moved between them. "Sir." Frank stopped. Ruth looked at me. "Please." I nodded. "Come with us." Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom." Ruth closed her eyes. I saw the pain hit her. He knew how to use that word too. "Mom." She turned toward him. Daniel looked desperate now. "What are you doing?" Ruth swallowed. "What I should have done years ago." His face twisted. "You're choosing her over me?" Ruth's eyes filled. "No." "Then come home." "No." His voice sharpened. "Dad is right. You're not well." Something changed in Ruth's face. Not fear. Recognition. She looked at Daniel the way a person looks at a photograph of someone they used to know. "You sound exactly like him." Daniel froze. Frank barked, "Enough." Ruth flinched. Then she straightened. "No, not enough." She walked past them. I followed. Outside, she sat in Rebecca's car and started crying. Not quietly. Not elegantly. She folded over and sobbed into both hands. I stood beside the open door. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part remembered every cold look she had ever given me. Every time she had told me to endure. I said, why? Ruth looked up. Her face was wet. Why what? Why did you treat me like that? She went still. I continued. You knew. Her mouth opened. You knew what Frank was like. Yes. You knew what it felt like to have someone control your money. Yes. To make you feel crazy. Yes. To use your child to keep you in place. Her chin started shaking. Yes. I felt tears burn my eyes. Then why did you help Daniel do it to me? Ruth looked down. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she said, because you reminded me of myself. I laughed bitterly. That's your excuse? No. Then what is it? She pressed her lips together. When I met Frank, I thought love meant standing by someone no matter what. So did I. I know. I gave up my job. I know. I gave up my money. I know. I stopped seeing my sister because every visit caused a fight. I know. My voice broke. And you told me to stay. Ruth closed her eyes. I know. I wiped my face angrily. You don't get to cry now. She nodded. You're right. That stopped me. No excuse. No defense. Just yes. She looked at me again. I watched you and kept thinking if you could make it work. Then maybe I had not wasted my life.
Esther her.
She continued. If you were too sensitive, then maybe I had been too sensitive. Her voice shook. If Daniel wasn't controlling, then maybe Frank hadn't controlled me. I said nothing. If you just needed to try harder, then maybe I hadn't been wrong to stay. Her tears came harder. You were proof that I might not have destroyed 38 years of my life for nothing. I felt something inside me crack open. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. Ruth whispered, every time I told you to endure, I was talking to the girl I used to be. I looked away. She added, and I hurt you because I was too afraid to admit she deserved better too. I breathed in slowly. You being hurt doesn't make what you did to me okay. I know. You don't get to erase 7 years because you gave me money and a phone. I know. I may never forgive you for some of it. Her eyes reddened. I know. That was the first honest conversation we had ever had. No pretending. No family loyalty. No for Lucy. No for Daniel. Just the truth. Rebecca asked Ruth if she had somewhere safe to go. Ruth looked at me. I have something first. What? Evidence. Thomas stepped closer. What kind? Ruth wiped her face. Enough to finish what I started. We drove to a small storage unit Ruth had rented under her maiden name. Inside were boxes, ledgers, old employee lists, copies of checks, flash drives, printed emails, cassette recordings. Hannah stared. You kept all this? Ruth nodded. For years. Thomas looked like someone had handed him a missing piece of his life. Frank never found it? He never thought I understood the business. Thomas smiled without humor. That was his mistake. Ruth reached for a smaller lockbox. Her hand shook as she opened it. This is Daniel's. My stomach tightened. Inside were copies of insurance forms, internal emails, drafted medical notes, a proposed rehabilitation plan after my surgery. I read the words twice. Postoperative anxiety, impaired judgment, temporary limitations in parental capacity. I looked up. What is this? Ruth's face went pale. Keep reading. I did. A proposed assessment suggested I might be unable to provide full-time care for Lucy during recovery. Another document discussed temporary placement. With Daniel, I felt the room tilt. They planned to take her. Ruth said nothing. I turned another page. There it was. A file header. Lucy Carter, Custody Strategy. My hands started shaking so badly that the papers rattled. Hannah moved beside me. Emily. I read. Mother currently lacks independent income. Mother financially dependent on spouse. Potential postoperative anxiety and pain medication use. Temporary physical limitations following donor nephrectomy. Possible basis for emergency custody review if mental or physical instability observed. I stopped. Then I read the last line again. If mental or physical instability observed. Observed. Not proven. Observed. By whom? Their doctors? Their rehab center? Their employees? People whose paychecks came from the Carter family? I looked at Ruth. You knew about this? I found it 4 days ago. And that's when you decided to warn me? She nodded. I felt something colder than fear settle inside me. Before that moment, part of me had still been thinking about the insurance policy, the affair, the money, my kidney. But Lucy changed everything. I looked at the papers again. They weren't planning to hurt me and then figure out what to do with Lucy. Ruth's mouth tightened. No. I looked at her. They already had the custody plan ready. Yes. I could barely hear my own voice. She was part of it from the beginning. Ruth nodded once. That was the moment my fear ended. Not because I felt safe. I didn't. But fear had finally found something stronger. Rage. Daniel could betray me. He could humiliate me. He could try to control my money. He could even plan to take advantage of my body. But Lucy? No. I closed the folder. Thomas watched me carefully. What are you thinking? I looked at the stacks of records Ruth had hidden for decades, then at the file with my daughter's name on it. For 7 years, Daniel kept telling me I was too emotional. Thomas said nothing. I picked up my phone. Good. Hannah frowned. Good. I looked at her. This time I'm not going to argue with him. I turned to Ruth. You said you have everything? Her eyes were still red. Not everything. Enough? She took a breath. Yes. I looked at Thomas. Then tell me who gets it first. He studied me. A lawyer. I have Rebecca. Then the hospital. I can do that. And after that? He looked down at Frank's records. Federal investigators. Ruth closed her eyes. I thought she might change her mind. Door number 3. This was the point where she had always turned back. Instead, she opened her eyes and said, "Do it." I looked at her. She looked terrified. But she did not take it back. That was when I understood something. Courage does not always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like a 58-year-old woman with swollen eyes saying 2 words she should have said 38 years earlier. Do it. I reached for the custody file. Daniel had spent years teaching me to doubt myself. Frank had spent decades teaching Ruth to stay silent. They had built their family on one assumption, that eventually both of us would choose fear over truth. For the first time, they were wrong. The first thing Rebecca Shaw told me was to stop trying to prove I was a good wife. I stared at her. What? We were sitting in her office the morning after we got Ruth out of Westbridge Recovery. I had barely slept. Lucy was with Hannah. Ruth was staying in a small hotel under another name with Thomas helping her move documents somewhere Frank couldn't reach them. And I had spent half the night writing down every argument Daniel and I had ever had. Every time he checked my spending. Every time he made me cancel plans. Every time he told me I was overreacting. I had come into Rebecca's office with 6 pages of notes because some part of me still believed that if I explained my marriage carefully enough, someone would finally understand that I had tried. Rebecca looked at the papers, then at me. You keep telling me you didn't want your marriage to fail. I didn't. You keep telling me you were loyal. I was. You keep telling me you tried to make things work. I did. I believe you. I stopped. She leaned forward. But none of that is what matters now. My throat tightened. It matters to me. I know. She tapped the custody file Ruth had found. But Daniel is not going to walk into court and ask whether you were a good wife. I looked down. He's going to ask whether you are unstable. I went cold. Rebecca continued. He's going to say you abandoned your husband on the morning of major surgery. He's going to say you panicked. He's going to say your sister influenced you. He's going to say his mother is mentally unwell and manipulated you. I swallowed. He already started. Exactly. She picked up my phone. Daniel had sent 14 messages overnight. Some sounded loving. Emily, please come home. We can work this out. Lucy needs both of us. Others were different. You are making decisions while emotionally overwhelmed. Your behavior is becoming concerning. If you keep isolating Lucy from me, I will have to protect my rights as her father. Rebecca looked at me. This is useful. I almost laughed. Useful? Yes. Makes me feel sick. Both can be true. She slid the phone back. Do not argue with him. What if he lies? He will. What if people believe him? Some will. I looked at her. You're very comforting. One corner of her mouth moved. I'm trying to keep you from doing what he expects, which is explaining yourself until you sound desperate. That hit harder than I wanted it to. Daniel had spent years making me prove things. Prove I wasn't spending too much. Prove I wasn't upset for no reason. Prove Hannah wasn't turning me against him. Prove I trusted him. Every argument ended with me defending my own feelings. Rebecca folded her hands. From now on you document. You do not perform. I nodded slowly. Okay. You do not show up at his house. Okay. You do not meet him alone. Okay. You do not delete a single message. I won't. And you stop saying your only concern is Lucy. I frowned. She is my only concern. No. Rebecca's voice softened. You are also allowed to be concerned about yourself. I looked away. She waited. Finally I said, that still feels selfish. That feeling is part of the problem. I didn't answer. She pushed a legal pad toward me. Let's start with the immediate issues. We filed for a temporary protection order based on coercion, threats, the hospital incident, and the documents Ruth had preserved. Rebecca also began preparing an emergency custody motion. Then she sent formal preservation notices to Daniel, Frank, Melissa, Carter Medical Transport, Westbridge Recovery, and 2 other Carter-owned entities. What does that do? I asked. It tells them not to destroy records, and if they do, her expression hardened. Then they create a different problem for themselves. For the first time in days, I almost smiled. After Rebecca, I went back to Allegheny General. Karen met me in a private office. The second she saw me, she stood. You're safe. It wasn't a question. Yes. She exhaled.
I'm glad.
I sat down and handed her copies of the rehabilitation documents. Her expression changed as she read. These came from your husband's family? Yes. She flipped to the page with the proposed psychological assessment. Then the draft recommendation about temporary parenting limitations. Her jaw tightened. Who prepared this? I don't know yet. And this was created before surgery? Yes. Karen looked at me. Did anyone discuss this plan with you? No. Did you consent to placement at Westbridge? I thought it was optional. She turned another page. This doesn't read optional. I felt my stomach tighten. Karen stood. I'm bringing in patient advocacy and risk management. Am I in trouble? She stared at me. For withdrawing? Yes. No. The answer came so fast I almost cried. Again.
No debate.
No guilt. No explanation required. Karen sat beside me. You did exactly what the consent process allows you to do. I nodded. My husband is telling people I panicked. Your husband is not the donor team. He says I abandoned him. Karen's expression stayed steady. You withdrew consent to a major surgery involving your own body. I looked at my hands. That sounds so simple when you say it. It is simple. Nothing about my marriage had ever felt simple. That was probably why hearing the truth in one sentence felt almost violent. I left the hospital with copies of my withdrawal documentation and the name of the hospital's patient advocate. By the time I reached Hannah's house, my phone was full of messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months. One was from Daniel's cousin. I can't believe you did this to him. Another came from a woman at our church. He is fighting for his life. Marriage means standing together in sickness and in health. Then an old neighbor. Daniel said you took Lucy and disappeared. Are you okay? That one almost made me angry enough to reply. Instead, I took screenshots. Document. Do not perform. Rebecca's voice was already getting into my head. Hannah saw my face when I came in. What now? I handed her the phone. She read 2 messages. Oh, absolutely not. She started typing. I grabbed the phone. What are you doing? Answering. No. Emily, these people are. No. She looked at me. I took the phone back. Rebecca said not to. Hannah stared for a second. Then she nodded. Good. What? You listened. I usually listen. No. Usually you listen to Daniel. I gave her a look. She shrugged. Too soon? A little. Lucy came into the kitchen carrying a stuffed rabbit. Mom? I crouched. Yeah, baby. Daddy called Aunt Hannah. My chest tightened. Hannah's face darkened. He called from another number. Lucy looked worried. He said he misses me. I'm sure he does. Can I see him? There was no good answer. I pulled her close. Not right now. She pulled back. Is it because he's sick? No. Did you make him sick? The question hit me like a slap. What? Lucy's face crumpled. Daddy said he was supposed to get better. Hannah muttered something under her breath. I kept my voice calm. Lucy listened to me. She looked at me with tears gathering. Daddy is sick because his kidneys are sick. Mommy did not make him sick. But you were gonna fix him. I was going to have surgery to help him. Why didn't you? I swallowed. Because I learned some things that made me feel unsafe. She frowned. Unsafe? Yes. From Daddy? I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to make my daughter responsible for adult truth. But I also did not want to teach her that lying was protection. So I said, there are some things grown-ups have to figure out with lawyers and judges. Lucy's eyes widened. Is Daddy bad? No. The answer came automatically. Then I stopped. That was the old reflex. Defend him first. I tried again. Daddy has made choices that hurt me. She was quiet. Did you hurt him? I looked at her. I made a choice about my own body. She didn't understand. That was okay. She was 6. I kissed her forehead. One day when you're older, I'll explain it better. She hugged me. Then she whispered, I don't want anybody to die. My eyes burned. Neither do I. That was the cruelest part. I didn't want Daniel dead. Even after the affair. Even after the insurance policy. Even after the custody file. I wanted him alive. I just no longer believed I had to risk my life to prove it. 2 days later, Daniel showed up outside Rebecca's office. I had just stepped onto the sidewalk when I saw him. He looked thinner. There were dark circles under his eyes. For one terrible second, I remembered helping him after dialysis. I remembered warming soup when he couldn't keep food down. I remembered him lying beside Lucy while she read him a picture book. My body remembered loving him before my mind could protect me. Emily. I stopped. Rebecca was still inside. I should have turned around. Instead I said, you shouldn't be here. Daniel held up both hands. I just want to talk. You have a lawyer. So do you. Then use them. His face twisted.
Jesus, Eminência.
You sound like a stranger. I almost laughed. You kissed Melissa in a hospital parking lot. His expression changed. Not guilt. Calculation. That isn't what you think. I stared at him. Of course. Even now. You're going with that? It was complicated. Your mouth on hers looked pretty simple. His jaw tightened. Can we not do this out here? No. Emily. No. He looked around, lowering his voice. My kidneys are failing. I said nothing. I could die. My throat closed. He saw it. He always saw it. His face softened immediately. Lucy needs her father. There it was. The sentence that had controlled me for months. Maybe years. I looked at him. Does she need a father who had a custody strategy written before her mother even went into surgery? Daniel's face went blank. Just for half a second. But I saw it. Then he frowned. What are you talking about? I took out my phone. I opened a photo of the first page. Lucy Carter, custody strategy. Daniel stared. His face drained. Where did you get that? Interesting question. My mother gave you those files. I didn't answer. He laughed once. She is out of her mind. She warned me before you did. Warned you about what? About you. His eyes hardened. There it is. What? This. He gestured toward me. You're letting everyone get in your head. I felt my pulse jump. My sister. Yes. Your mother. Yes. My lawyer. Yes. The hospital. He threw up his hands. You're under enormous stress. I stared at him. Daniel lowered his voice. You disappeared on the morning of surgery. I withdrew consent. You ran. I withdrew consent. You took my daughter. Our daughter. You didn't answer your phone. I watched you kiss your mistress next to a $2 million insurance policy on my life. His face hardened. Melissa is not my mistress. I pulled up the video. Paused it. Daniel's hand around her waist. His mouth on hers. I held it up. He stopped talking. For the first time in 7 years, silence belonged to me. Then he said, you were filming us? I almost laughed. That's what bothers you? You were hiding and recording my family. Your father was forcing your mother into a van. She was hysterical. She said no. She needed help. She said no. His expression changed. The calm started cracking. You don't understand my mother. I understand her better than I did last week. She has a history of instability. I felt cold. The exact same words. First Ruth. Then me. Instability. Overreaction. Emotional distress. I said, was that the plan for me too? His eyes narrowed. What plan? Call me unstable after surgery. You're being ridiculous. Put me in Westbridge. For recovery. Have one of your doctors document anxiety. You have anxiety. I froze. Daniel stopped. He knew he had gone too far. I looked at him. You already decided what diagnosis I needed. His face tightened. That's not what I said. No, it's exactly what you said. I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough. Every muscle in my body locked. Emily. I looked down at his hand, then at him. Let go. He released me. His expression shifted again. Back to hurt. Back to husband. I am trying to save our family. I laughed. No. Yes. No, Daniel. You are trying to keep control of it. That is not fair. You know what isn't fair? My voice started shaking, but I didn't care. I had a job when I met you. He blinked. What? I had an apartment. Emily. I had my own car. My own checking account. My own friends. His jaw tightened. And you keep acting like you gave me everything. I supported you. You made sure I needed your support. His face turned hard. That house came from me. I said nothing. The car came from me. I kept looking at him. Your insurance came from me. Your credit cards. Your lifestyle. Everything you have is because of me. There it was. Finally. Not hidden inside concern. Not disguised as love. The truth. I nodded slowly. That's exactly the problem. He frowned. You were nothing when I met you. For a second the words hurt. Then they didn't. Because I remembered 21-year-old Emily. Working. Paying rent. Driving her own beat-up Honda. Meeting Hannah whenever she wanted. Buying coffee without anyone receiving an alert. I looked straight at him. No. Daniel stared. I had a life when you met me. He opened his mouth. I continued. You didn't give me one. My voice steadied. You slowly convinced me to hand mine over. His face went still. I stepped back. And I'm taking it back. I walked into Rebecca's office before he could answer. My knees started shaking only after the door closed. Rebecca looked up from her desk. What happened? He was outside. She stood. Did he touch you? My arm. Her expression sharpened. Any injury? No. Did anyone see? Probably. Good. I laughed shakily. You really do turn everything into evidence. Yes. I sat down. Then I started crying. Rebecca gave me a box of tissues. She didn't tell me to stop. She didn't tell me to calm down. She let me cry until I could speak. Then she said, he showed you something today. I wiped my face. What? That when guilt stopped working, he used ownership.
Esther daher.
He said everything I have came from him. Rebecca nodded. And? I told him I had a life before him. Good. I looked at her. Didn't feel good. Most important things don't at first. That afternoon, Ruth met with investigators.
Thomas sat beside her.
I sat across the room. She had 3 boxes of documents. Frank's ledgers. Copies of checks. Employee names. Contracts. Recordings. The federal agents asked careful questions. Dates. Companies. Who signed what? Who knew? Ruth answered. First her voice shook. Then it steadied. When one agent asked Mrs. Carter, why did you wait so long to come forward? Ruth went silent. I watched her hands twist together. Finally she said, because I was afraid. The agent waited. Ruth continued. And because after enough years fear starts sounding like loyalty. I looked down. That sentence stayed with me. The investigation moved faster after that. A Medicare fraud team became involved. Then state investigators. Then banking records were subpoenaed. Rebecca warned me not to expect anything dramatic overnight. Real cases are slow. But cracks had already started showing. One Carter facility postponed a planned expansion. A bank requested additional documentation. A longtime business partner suddenly stopped returning Frank's calls. Then Melissa called me. It was nearly 11 at night. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice. Emily. Every muscle in my body tightened. Melissa. Don't hang up. Why shouldn't I? Because Daniel doesn't know I'm calling. I stood and walked away from the room where Lucy was sleeping. What do you want? I need to talk to you. I have lawyers for that. I know. Then call them. Melissa exhaled. He's panicking. Good. That isn't why I called. I leaned against the wall. Then why? Silence. When she spoke again, the confidence I remembered was gone. Frank wants me to say I prepared those documents independently. I said nothing. He says Daniel never authorized the custody strategy. Did he? Yes. My grip tightened around the phone. Did Daniel tell you to increase my life insurance? Another pause. Yes. I closed my eyes. Did he know about the rehab plan? Yes. Did he intend to use it against me? Melissa's voice dropped. I don't know how far he intended to go. That's not an answer. I know. I heard fear in her voice now. Real fear. Then she said, there are emails. My eyes opened. What emails? Between Daniel and Frank. About me? Yes. About the surgery? Yes. My heart started pounding. Send them to my lawyer. I can't. Why? Because if they know I have them, you're scared. She laughed once. It sounded almost broken. You think? I felt no sympathy. Not yet. You helped them. I know. You sat in my house. I know. You bought my daughter a birthday gift. Her voice cracked. I know. You slept with my husband while helping prepare documents to take my child. I know. For a second I heard Ruth. The same answer. No defense. Just acknowledgement. Melissa whispered, I thought he was going to leave you. I laughed. That makes the custody plan okay? No. The insurance? No. The rehab center? No. Then why are you calling me? Silence. Then she said something I did not expect. Because Frank is trying to make me the one who takes the fall. I stared at the wall. And Daniel? He's letting him. That didn't surprise me. Maybe nothing Daniel did could surprise me anymore. Melissa continued. They're telling investigators I acted outside instructions. That I drafted everything because I misunderstood what they wanted. Did you? No. Then prove it. I'm trying. Her breathing sounded uneven. I asked, why should I help you? You shouldn't. That answer stopped me. Melissa swallowed. But you need what I have. I didn't speak. She continued. And I need you to understand something. What? A long pause. Then her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You weren't the only woman Daniel was planning to sacrifice. I went completely still. What does that mean? Tell Rebecca Shaw I want to cooperate. Melissa, tell her tonight. The line went dead. I stood there with the phone in my hand. For years, I had thought Daniel's power came from being calm, from always having the better argument, from making me doubt what I saw. But now Ruth was talking. I was documenting. And Melissa was turning on him. The women Daniel and Frank had counted on staying quiet were starting to speak one by one. And for the first time, I understood why men like them work so hard to keep people isolated. It was not because the truth was weak. It was because once the truth was shared, control became much harder to maintain. Melissa did not ask for forgiveness. That was probably the only reason I agreed to sit in the same room with her. Rebecca arranged the meeting in her office 2 days after Melissa's late-night call. Thomas was there. So was a federal investigator named Agent Cole, who had already reviewed part of Ruth's records. Melissa arrived 10 minutes early. She looked nothing like the woman I had seen stepping out of Daniel's car at the hospital. No polished smile. No expensive confidence. No look that said she already knew how every conversation would end. She sat across from me with both hands wrapped around a paper cup she wasn't drinking from. Rebecca spoke first. You understand this meeting does not give you immunity. Melissa nodded. Yes. You understand anything you provide may be used in an investigation involving you. Yes. And you have independent counsel? Yes. Rebecca looked at me. I knew she was giving me the chance to leave. I stayed. Melissa finally looked at me. Emily. I didn't answer. Her mouth tightened. I'm sorry. I felt nothing. At least nothing useful. I don't care. She flinched. I continued. You didn't call because you were sorry. No. You called because Frank decided you were disposable. Her eyes dropped. Yes. And Daniel let him. Yes. I leaned back. Then let's not pretend this is about your conscience. Melissa looked at me again. It isn't only about that. I waited. She swallowed. I knew Daniel was married. Hearing her say it so plainly made my chest tighten. He told me you were separated in everything but paperwork. I laughed once. That's original. I know. He told you I wouldn't let him leave? Yes. Did he tell you I was unstable? Melissa closed her eyes for half a second. Yes. Of course he did. He told me you had panic issues, that you controlled access to Lucy, that you used guilt to keep him in the marriage.
I stared her.
Daniel had taken my life and flipped it. Every accusation I had made against him, he had quietly made against me somewhere else. Melissa continued. I believed some of it because he was very convincing. He usually is. He never raised his voice. That nearly made me laugh. Neither did Frank. Melissa looked at me sharply. For the first time I saw that she understood. Not all of it, but enough. Rebecca said, show us the emails. Melissa opened her laptop. There were dozens. Some were routine. Insurance authorizations, rehabilitation planning, scheduling, financial arrangements. Then she opened a thread between Daniel and Frank. The subject line read,
Post op Zeeuwen tegen CIS.
My stomach turned. Melissa scrolled. Daniel had written, "If Emily has trouble after surgery, I want Westbridge to handle everything. No outside rehab." Frank replied, "Agreed. Keep documentation clean." Then Daniel, "Once surgery happens, timing gets easier." I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. Rebecca asked, "Timing for what?" Melissa shook her head. "He never wrote it out." Agent Cole said, "What did you understand it to mean?" Melissa hesitated. That after surgery, Emily would be physically weak, on medication, dependent on Daniel and the facility. My hands went cold. Agent Cole continued, "And the custody documents?" Melissa swallowed. "Daniel asked me to prepare options. For emergency custody? Yes. Before the surgery? Yes. I spoke before Rebecca could. You knew I was still living with him." Melissa looked at me. "Yes. You knew I had never been hospitalized for psychiatric reasons. Yes. You knew I had never been declared unfit. Yes." Her face reddened. "Yes. And you still wrote that I could be unstable after surgery." She didn't defend herself. I did. I wanted to hate her more. It would have been easier if she had argued. Instead, she looked ashamed. That did not erase anything, but it made the room feel less simple. Agent Cole asked, "What about the insurance policy?" Melissa opened another folder. "Daniel requested the increase 9 months ago." 9? I said. She nodded. "Before the transplant workup." I felt my pulse jump. "Before he knew I was a match." "Yes." Rebecca looked at me. I understood the significance. This had started before the kidney. The surgery had not created the plan. It had given them an opportunity to speed it up. Melissa continued. "The increase was initially proposed at 1 million. Daniel changed it to 2. Why? He said the family had significant obligations and Lucy's future needed to be protected." I almost laughed. Lucy's future. Melissa looked sick. "I know." Agent Cole asked, "Did Frank know?" "Yes." "Did he approve?" "He told Daniel to make sure the premiums were paid through personal funds, not a Carter entity." Thomas muttered he knew exactly what it looked like. Melissa nodded. "There's more." She opened a voice memo. "I recorded this after Frank told me to destroy draft correspondence." Rebecca's expression sharpened. "You recorded Frank? And Daniel?" She pressed play. Frank's voice came first. "You're legal. You clean this up." Melissa's recorded voice answered. "I can't make emails disappear." Frank snapped, "Then you should have thought about that before putting things in writing." Daniel said, "Dad." Frank continued. "If anyone asks, Melissa prepared the custody documents as a precaution. We never told her to do anything illegal." Melissa said, "That's not true." Then Daniel, "Can we just get through this?" Melissa's voice sharpened. "You asked me to draft them." Daniel replied, "I asked for options. You told me Emily would be easier to manage after surgery." Silence. Then Daniel's voice, low and furious. "Be careful." The recording ended. Nobody spoke for several seconds. I stared at the laptop. There it was. Not murder. Not a confession. Something almost worse because it sounded so ordinary. Manage. As if I were a problem. A patient. An account. Piece of property. Rebecca shut the laptop. "That's enough for today." Melissa looked at me. "There's one more thing." I did not want one more thing. But I said, "What?" She took a breath. "Daniel was never going to marry me."
Esther daher.
"That's what you called to tell me?" "No. He told you that?" "He told me we would be together after the divorce." I gave her a flat look. "Congratulations." Melissa shook her head. "You don't understand." "Then explain." Her eyes filled with anger now. Not at me. At herself. "At the hospital, after you left, Frank told Daniel that if investigators asked questions, I was the cleanest person to blame because I wasn't family. I said nothing. Daniel didn't defend me." She laughed bitterly. "He just stood there." I remembered him standing there while Frank dragged Ruth toward the van. Of course he had. That was Daniel's real talent. He could watch someone else be sacrificed as long as it kept him comfortable. Melissa looked down. That's when I finally understood. "What? I wasn't replacing you." Her voice cracked. I was next. For the first time, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But sympathy did not mean absolution. "You still helped him." "I know. You'll still have to answer for that." "I know." Rebecca looked at her. "Then cooperate fully." Melissa nodded. "I will." After she left, I sat there staring at the closed door. Thomas said, "You okay?" "No." Fair. I looked at Rebecca. What happens now? Now the investigation gets bigger. It did. Fast. Not movie fast. Nobody kicked down Frank's door the next morning. Nobody let Daniel away in handcuffs before lunch. But the Carter name started losing its magic. That was almost better. For years, Frank had treated reputation like armor. Then one piece at a time it stopped working. A regional bank froze access to several business accounts pending review. A hospital system suspended new referrals to Carter Medical Transport. A planned county contract disappeared from the public agenda. Westbridge Recovery announced an internal compliance review. Frank called it a temporary misunderstanding. Then federal agents executed search warrants at 2 Carter offices. After that, people stopped calling it a misunderstanding. Reporters started waiting outside the main office. Church acquaintances who once praised Frank's generosity suddenly claimed they barely knew him. A charity board removed his name from an upcoming fundraiser. Hannah sent me a screenshot. Frank Carter will not serve as honorary chair this year. She added, "Thoughts and prayers." I laughed for the first time in weeks, then immediately felt guilty. Hannah called. "Did you just laugh?" "No, you did. I'm a terrible person." "No, you're a person whose father-in-law can't host a charity dinner because the FBI has his accounting records." I laughed again. Stop. Never. Felt strange. Laughing. Normal. Almost dangerous. Like happiness was something I had stopped expecting. But the investigation was only one part of my life. I still needed a job. That scared me more than I wanted to admit. 7 years. 7 years without a formal paycheck. I updated my resume 3 times and deleted it twice. The first version said, 2019 to 2026. Stay-at-home mother. I stared at that line. It looked like an apology. Hannah saw it. "Why did you write just?" I looked up. "What?" She pointed to my notes. I had written, "Just stayed home with Lucy." Crossed out the word. A week later, I sat across from a hiring manager at a medical group in MT Lebanon. Her name was Susan Patel. She asked about my previous billing experience. That part was easy. Then she looked at the gap. "And what were you doing during these 7 years?" My old answer came automatically. I stopped. Susan waited. I thought about Lucy's appointments, insurance disputes, household budgets, Daniel's dialysis schedule, school forms, medical research, everything I had managed while telling myself it did not count. I started again. I raised my daughter full-time. I managed a household, handled medical scheduling and insurance paperwork, and did more administrative coordination than I realized at the time. Susan smiled slightly. "That sounds like most office managers I know." I laughed. She continued, "Why are you coming back now?" That question was harder. I could have lied. Instead I said, "Because I need my own income again." Susan didn't look surprised. "Good reason." 3 days later she offered me the job. 32 hours a week to start. Benefits after 60 days. Nothing glamorous. Nothing impressive enough for a Carter charity brochure. I cried when I got the email. Hannah thought something was wrong. "What happened?" I handed her my phone. She read it, then screamed. Lucy ran into the room. "What?" "Aunt Hannah is dramatic," I said. Hannah pointed at me. "Your mom got a job." Lucy's face lit up. "You work now?" "I do." "Like Daddy?" The question stung. I smiled anyway. "Like me." My first paycheck was smaller than what Daniel used to spend on a weekend trip. I opened a bank account in my maiden name and married name together, because Rebecca said it would make future paperwork easier. When the deposit hit, I stared at the screen. My money. No alert sent to Daniel. No one asking why I spent $80. No one reviewing it. No one telling me what I was allowed to do with it. I transferred $50 into savings just because I could. Then I bought Lucy pizza. It was the best money I had spent in years. Ruth was rebuilding more slowly. She had moved into a short-term rental. One afternoon, I found her sitting at Hannah's kitchen table while Lucy colored beside her. Ruth looked tired but different. Lighter somehow. Lucy held up a drawing. "Grandma Ruth, is Daddy bad?" Ruth froze. I was standing in the doorway. She looked at me unsure. I stepped inside. "Why are you asking that?" Lucy shrugged. "Kids at school say his dad is on the news." My stomach dropped. "Who said that?" "Jason." "Of course Jason. Every elementary school had a Jason." Lucy frowned. "Is Daddy bad?"
He sat beside her.
That's a hard question. She looked frustrated. Everybody says that. Ruth's eyes filled. Lucy looked at her. Did Daddy hurt you? Ruth was quiet. Then she said, he made some choices that hurt people. Mom says that too. I smiled weakly. Lucy thought for a moment. Is Grandma Ruth bad? Ruth went completely still. I looked at her. She looked down. That answer belonged partly to me. So I said, Grandma Ruth did some things that hurt me. Lucy looked shocked. You're still friends. Ruth's face crumpled slightly. I put my hand over Lucy's crayons. Loving someone doesn't mean pretending they never hurt you. Lucy frowned. Then what does it mean? It means they have to tell the truth. Ruth whispered, and do better. Lucy looked between us. That's confusing. I laughed. Yeah. She went back to coloring. Grown-ups are weird. Ruth and I looked at each other. For once we agreed completely. The first indictments came 4 months after I walked out of the hospital. Frank was charged first. Healthcare fraud. White fraud. Conspiracy. Money laundering. Financial exploitation tied to several elderly clients. Obstruction-related charges were added later. I read the filing twice. Not because I wanted to enjoy it. Because I needed to understand that this was real. Frank Carter. The man whose name was printed on donor plaques. The man who had spent decades deciding what everyone else was allowed to say. Charged. Daniel came next. His charges were narrower, but they were enough. Conspiracy related to fraudulent financial activity. Insurance-related fraud. Coercive use of falsified documentation became part of the investigation. There were also continuing inquiries into the attempted use of medical records and custody strategy. Rebecca warned me repeatedly. Charges are not convictions. I know. And the criminal case will take time. I know. Do not build your recovery around what sentence they get. That one I had to think about. Because part of me still wanted a number. 10 years. 20. Life. Something that would feel equal to what they had tried to take. But there was no number for that. How many years was my fear worth? How many for the life Ruth lost? How many for the moment Lucy asked if I made Daddy sick? You could not put all of that into a sentencing chart. The day of Frank's arraignment, Ruth insisted on going. Rebecca advised against it. Ruth said, I need to see him walk into a courtroom. Thomas asked why. She answered because for 38 years every room belonged to him. I understood. So I went with her. Daniel was there too for a related hearing. He looked smaller. Not physically. Something else. The Carter name no longer moved people aside. Court officers told him where to stand. Lawyers interrupted him. A clerk mispronounced his middle name. Nobody cared that his father had donated to half the county. For the first time the rules applied to him. Afterward we walked toward the courthouse steps. I heard Daniel behind us. Mom. Ruth stopped. Just for a second. I felt her hand tighten around mine. Daniel called again. Mom. His voice cracked. I turned slightly. He looked desperate. Not angry. Not polished. Just desperate. Please. Ruth's face went pale. I knew what she was seeing. Not the man behind us. The boy he had once been. The child Frank had used to keep her home. The son she had spent 38 years trying to save from becoming his father. Daniel took a step forward. You're really doing this? Ruth's mouth trembled. You did this. No. His face twisted. You chose her. Ruth looked at me. Then back at him. No, Daniel. Her voice was soft. I spent 38 years choosing you. He froze. I stayed because of you. Mom. I forgave your father because of you. Her eyes filled. I ignored what you were becoming because I kept telling myself you were still the little boy I was trying to protect. Daniel shook his head. I'm not Dad. Ruth swallowed. Then why did your wife have to run from you? His face changed. No answer. Ruth looked down at our joined hands. Then she whispered, I loved you enough to ruin my own life. Daniel stared at her. And I thought that was motherhood. She wiped one tear from her cheek. It wasn't. His voice cracked. Mom, please. For years that word had been enough. Ruth took one breath. Then she looked at me. Keep walking. So we did. Daniel called after us. I did not turn around. Neither did she. Halfway down the steps Ruth started crying. She never stopped walking. I squeezed her hand. She squeezed mine back. That was all. No speech.
No celebration.
No victory music. Just two women moving forward while the men who had trained us to stop were finally behind us. I thought that was the end of the fight. I should have known better. 3 days later, Rebecca called while I was at work. Her voice was different. Emily, are you somewhere you can talk? My stomach tightened. Yes. Daniel filed a petition. For what? Silence. Then she said, Lucy. Everything in me went cold. What does he want? Enforcement of parental access and preservation of custody rights, while the criminal case is pending. I stood up. He's still doing this? Yes. He's under indictment. That does not automatically terminate parental rights. My hand started shaking. What happens now? Rebecca's voice stayed calm. We answer. I looked through the office window at my reflection. For months earlier, that sentence would have terrified me. Daniel wants Lucy. Daniel has lawyers. Daniel knows the system. Daniel will win. But I wasn't the woman who had walked into the hospital anymore. I had my own lawyer, my own bank account, my own job, evidence, witnesses, and a daughter who would never again be used as the reason I had to surrender. I picked up a pen. Tell me what you need. Rebecca paused, then said, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. I looked down at my desk. For 7 years, Daniel had used Lucy to keep me in place. Now he was trying one last time. But there was something he still did not understand. I was no longer fighting to save my marriage. I was fighting to make sure my daughter never learned that love was supposed to feel like fear. The last time Daniel tried to use Lucy to control me, he did it in a courtroom. That was the part one should have expected. For years, whenever he wanted me to give something up, he said her name. Lucy needs stability. Lucy needs both parents. Lucy needs you home. Lucy needs her father. He had turned our daughter into the answer to every question I was not supposed to ask. So when Rebecca told me Daniel had filed to preserve custody rights and force regular access, while the criminal case was pending, I was angry. But I was not surprised. What exactly is he asking for? I said. Rebecca sat across from me with the petition open on her laptop. Temporary parenting time. Phone contact. A court order preventing you from relocating Lucy outside the area. I'm not relocating. I know. Then why include it? Because it lets him suggest you might. I leaned back. Of course. Rebecca glanced at me. You're getting better at this. At what? Recognizing strategy without taking it personally. I almost laughed. It's very personal. Yes. She closed the laptop. But we don't have to answer it emotionally. That was harder. Daniel had always known how to make me react. Now even his legal filings sounded like him. Concerned father. Abandoned husband.
Sick man.
He claimed I had removed Lucy from the family home without warning. True. He claimed I had restricted communication. Also true. He claimed I had abruptly withdrawn from a life-saving transplant. True again. Rebecca looked at me. This is why facts matter. I know. No, I mean facts don't become bad because he chooses ugly words for them. I looked down at my hands. I left because I believed I was unsafe. Yes, I restricted contact because he was telling Lucy I was responsible for his illness. Yes, I withdrew consent because I discovered undisclosed financial and custody plans connected to my recovery. Yes, Rebecca nodded. That is what we say. I let out a breath. No speech about being a good mother? No. No explaining how much I love Lucy. The court assumes you love your child. That sentence nearly made me laugh. Daniel had trained me to believe love only counted if I proved it by suffering. The court wanted records, dates, messages, documents. In a strange way, that was easier. The hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later. During those 3 weeks, Daniel called Lucy twice through supervised arrangements. The first call lasted 9 minutes. I stayed in the kitchen while Hannah sat near Lucy. I could hear Daniel's voice through the tablet. Hey, pumpkin. Lucy smiled despite herself.
Daddy.
How's school? Good. Do you miss me? I closed my eyes. Lucy said, yeah. I miss you too. A pause. Then Daniel asked, is mommy there? Hannah looked at me. I shook my head. Lucy said, she's in the kitchen. Daniel's voice softened. Tell her daddy loves both of you. I gripped the counter. Hannah immediately said, Daniel, this call is for Lucy. I know. I'm talking to my daughter. Then talk to her. A longer pause. Daniel said, of course. After the call ended, Lucy came into the kitchen.
Daddy sounds sad.
I'm sure he is. She frowned. Do you want him to be sad? The question caught me off guard. No. Then why don't you go home? I crouched in front of her. Because someone being sad doesn't mean you have to do what they want. Lucy thought about that. Even Daddy. Even Daddy. She looked uncertain. Then she asked, even you? I smiled. Especially me. That answer seemed to make more sense to her. She nodded and ran off to finish her homework. I stood there for a long time afterward. That was what I wanted to give her. Not a perfect childhood. Not a life where nobody hurt her feelings. Just one rule I had never been taught. Someone else's disappointment does not own you. The second call went worse. Daniel asked Lucy whether she remembered the house. Lucy said yes. He asked whether she wanted to sleep in her old room. She said yes. Then he said maybe soon. Hannah ended the call. He complained through his attorney. Rebecca responded with the recording. After that, all communication stayed supervised. The night before the hearing, Ruth came to my apartment. I had moved out of Hannah's house by then. It was small. 2 bedrooms. Second floor walk-up. The kitchen cabinets were ugly. The washing machine sounded like it was trying to escape the building. I loved it. Every bill had my name on it. Every key belonged to me. Ruth stood in the doorway holding a casserole. I looked at it. Did you cook? She frowned. Why does everyone ask that like it's shocking? Because you used to have someone else cook Christmas dinner. That was Frank. He didn't cook. He hired people and then complained. I laughed. Ruth smiled. The smile still looked new on her. She came inside and put the dish on the counter. Lucy asleep? Finally, Ruth sat. I poured coffee. She stared at her cup. You're nervous. Yes. Daniel will try to make you feel guilty. I know. He'll look sick. I know. He'll probably cry. I looked at her. You know your son. Her mouth tightened. Yes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ruth said, I used to think crying proved Frank cared. I waited. The first time I tried to leave, he cried for 6 hours. Frank. She nodded. He sat on the kitchen floor. I could barely imagine it. What did he say? That I was destroying our family. Of course. Ruth gave a small, bitter laugh. Then when crying didn't work, he reminded me he had the money. I sat across from her. Daniel does the same thing. I know. He just makes it sound more modern. That made her smile. Then her eyes filled. Emily. What? If the judge gives him some access. I know. No. I mean, if that happens, it doesn't mean you failed. I looked at her. Ruth's voice shook. I spent years thinking every bad thing that happened was proof I hadn't tried hard enough. I reached across the table. You don't have to keep warning me about becoming you. Her face fell. I'm sorry. That isn't what I meant. I squeezed her fingers. I mean, I already understand. She looked at our hands, then nodded. The hearing started at 9 the next morning. Daniel was already there when I arrived. He wore a dark suit that hung looser than it used to. His face looked thinner. His skin had that gray, exhausted tone I had seen after dialysis. For one terrible second, all I saw was the man I had cared for. The man who used to come home from treatment and whisper, "Can you sit with me?" The man I had once loved. Then I remembered the email. Once surgery happens, timing gets easier. I walked past him. Emily. I stopped. Rebecca said quietly, you don't have to. I know. I turned. Daniel stared at me. You look good. I said nothing. He swallowed. I mean it. Your lawyer can talk to mine. His face tightened. Can we not do that for 30 seconds? No. Emily, please. That word again. Please. The word people use when they want to make a demand sound gentle. I started to turn away. Daniel said, I'm still her father. I looked back. Yes. His expression changed, almost surprised. I'm not trying to erase you. Then why are you fighting me? Because being her father doesn't give you the right to use her against me. His jaw tightened. I never did that. I almost smiled. There was no point arguing. That was the freedom evidence gave me. I did not need his agreement. Inside the courtroom, Rebecca kept things simple. She presented Daniel's messages. The custody strategy prepared before my surgery. The rehabilitation plan. The supervised call recording. The criminal charges. The hospital documentation confirming I had lawfully withdrawn from donation. Daniel's attorney tried to make the transplant the center of everything. Mrs. Carter, you understood your husband was suffering from end-stage renal disease? Yes. And you had agreed to donate? Yes. You changed your mind on the morning of surgery? I withdrew consent. Knowing he could die? I looked at Rebecca. She gave the smallest nod. I answered, I knew he would continue to receive medical treatment. That wasn't my question. I understood his condition was serious. And you still walked away? I felt the old shame rise. Then Karen's voice came back. Your body is not an obligation.
Isetstrete.
I withdrew consent to surgery on my own body after discovering information that made me believe I would not be safe during recovery. Daniel's attorney looked annoyed. Your husband did not physically force you to donate. No. He did not threaten you with violence if you refused. No. So your decision was voluntary from the beginning. I looked at him. My decision to donate was voluntary. My decision to stop was also voluntary. The attorney paused. Rebecca looked down to hide a smile. The next questions were about Lucy. Why I took her. Why I limited calls. Why I did not immediately return home. I answered each one. No speeches. No apologies. Then Daniel testified. That was harder. He cried exactly like Ruth predicted. He spoke about Lucy's birth, her first day of kindergarten, how he missed making pancakes on Saturday mornings. Some of it was true. That made it worse. Daniel had not been a monster every day. If he had been, I would have left sooner. He had been funny, attentive sometimes, tender sometimes. He loved Lucy in whatever way he understood love. But love did not erase control. His attorney asked, "Do you want to remove Lucy from her mother?" No. Daniel's voice broke. I want my daughter. I felt my chest tighten. Then Rebecca stood. Mr. Carter, did you authorize Melissa Grant to prepare a custody strategy regarding Lucy before your wife's donor surgery? Daniel looked at her. I asked legal counsel to consider contingencies. Yes or no? Yes. Did Emily know? No. Did you tell Ms. Grant Emily might be easier to manage after surgery? His face changed. I don't remember saying that. Rebecca played the recording. His own voice filled the courtroom. I asked for options. Melissa's voice. You told me Emily would be easier to manage after surgery. Daniel, be careful. The room went silent. Rebecca waited. Then asked, do you remember now? Daniel's eyes flicked toward me. Yes. Did you believe your wife's postoperative weakness could help you obtain control over Lucy? No. Then why prepare an emergency custody strategy before the surgery? My father advised me to protect myself. From what? Daniel hesitated. Rebecca said, from your wife? His voice went quiet. Yes. I looked at Ruth. She was sitting behind me. Her face did not move, but tears were rolling down her cheeks. The judge did not terminate Daniel's parental rights. Rebecca had warned me that would be unlikely. Instead, I received primary physical custody. Daniel's contact remained supervised while the criminal case continued, and until a family evaluator determined whether broader access would be appropriate. He was prohibited from discussing the transplant, criminal proceedings, or custody dispute with Lucy. It was not a movie ending. It was better. It was a boundary written down by someone Daniel could not talk over. Outside the courtroom, he followed me. Emily. Rebecca turned. I'll handle it. I shook my head. No. I faced Daniel. He looked exhausted. I just want 1 minute. 1. He swallowed. Do you remember our wedding? I almost laughed. Yes. Lake Erie. Yes. You cried before you walked down the aisle. I did. You said you were scared. I stared at him. And you told me you'd never give me a reason to be. His face twisted. I meant it. Maybe you did then. Eminência. No. His eyes filled. We had good years. I nodded. Yes. That surprised him. He stepped closer. We did. Yes. His expression softened. I continued. That's why it took me so long to admit what you became. His face hardened again. There it is. What? You talk like I'm some kind of criminal. You're under indictment. That's not what I mean. I know. He rubbed one hand over his face. I was scared. So was I. My kidneys were failing. I know. My father was pressuring me. I know. Melissa was. No. He stopped. I shook my head. You don't get to build a line of people between you and your choices. He stared at me. I still love you. For a second, that sentence hurt more than anything else. Then I understood it. Maybe he believed it. That did not mean I had to. I said, you loved what I was willing to give you. That's not fair. Neither was asking for everything. His face crumpled. I turned away. He called my name once more. I kept walking, just like Ruth had. Daniel did not die because I refused to donate. That mattered to me. He remained on dialysis and was evaluated through the normal transplant system. Months later, Rebecca told me his doctors were pursuing another donor option through a paired exchange program. I was relieved. I did not want his death. I wanted my life. There was a difference. Frank's case took almost a year. He eventually pleaded guilty to multiple federal financial charges after several former employees agreed to testify, and the records Ruth kept were matched against banking and billing data. The sentence was long enough that Ruth said very quietly, "I may never see him free again." I asked how she felt. She thought about it. Sad. I waited. Relieved. Then she gave me a tired smile. Both. Daniel's case ended with a plea agreement on several financial and fraud-related charges. Other allegations remained part of the custody record, even where they did not result in separate criminal convictions. Melissa cooperated. Her law license went into disciplinary proceedings. She lost her position. The last time I heard from her, she sent Rebecca a message asking that I be told she was sorry. I did not answer. Some apologies are useful. Some are simply true. They do not all require a response. A year after the hospital, my life looked smaller than the Carter life. It felt bigger. I was working full-time again. I had my own health insurance, my own retirement account, my own emergency savings. The first time I reached $5,000 in that account, I stared at the number like I had won the lottery. Hannah looked over my shoulder. "You know Frank used to spend that on wine at one fundraiser. Please don't ruin this." "I'm just saying, it's my $5,000. She grinned. "That's the point." I had also started volunteering twice a month with a patient advocacy group connected to the hospital's living donor program. The first time Karen asked me to speak with a woman considering donating to her brother, I almost said no. What am I supposed to tell her? The truth. What truth? Karen smiled. That she gets to choose. So that was what I did. I never told people not to donate. I told them to ask questions. I told them to understand recovery. I told them to have independent support. And I always said the same thing. You are allowed to love someone and still ask questions. Sometimes I added, you are allowed to change your mind. And if I saw the same guilt in their faces that I once carried, I said, your body is not a debt. Ruth moved into a small house about 15 minutes from me. The first time I visited, I stopped in the living room and stared. She had bought a bright orange couch. Not burnt orange. Not tasteful rust. Orange. I looked at her. That is terrible. Ruth crossed her arms. I know. You paid money for that? Yes. Why? She smiled. Because Frank would have hated it. I laughed. That's not healthy. Probably not. Then she sat down proudly. But I picked it myself. That sentence mattered more than the couch. She had her own bank account now. Her own debit card. Her own utility bills. She once called me because she had accidentally locked herself out of online banking. I talked her through resetting the password. She sighed. I feel 90. You're 59. Same thing. Not even close. At Christmas, Ruth asked what time dinner should be. I said, whenever you want. She frowned. That is not an answer. It's your house. She stared at me. I could see the old habit. Looking for the right choice. The safe choice. The choice someone else would approve. Then she said great. No. I laughed. What? 5:30. Okay. She smiled. I changed my mind. I smiled back. You're allowed. Lucy decorated Ruth's tree. Half the ornaments were clustered on one side because that was where she could reach. Ruth started to move them, then stopped. I like it. I looked at her. You hate uneven decorations. I'm evolving. You bought an orange couch. Exactly. Later, Lucy sat at the table drawing. She had grown taller that year. Lost one front tooth. Started correcting everyone's grammar for no reason. Ruth leaned over. What are you drawing? You. Why is my hair purple? Because brown is boring. Ruth nodded seriously. Fair. Lucy held up the picture. There were 3 people. Me, Lucy, Ruth, all holding hands. Underneath, in uneven letters, she had written, Grandma Ruth, Mom, and me. Ruth stopped smiling. Her eyes filled almost immediately. Lucy frowned. Why are you crying? Ruth touched the edge of the paper. Because I should have walked away a long time ago. Lucy looked confused. From what? Ruth glanced at me. I answered for her. From things that were hurting her. Lucy looked at Ruth. Why didn't you? Ruth gave a shaky laugh. Because I was scared. Lucy considered that. Then she said Mom was scared too. I looked at her. Ruth nodded. Yes, but she left. Yes. Lucy pointed at the picture. And then she got you. Ruth covered her mouth. I felt tears rise too.
He sat beside her.
Ruth whispered, you came back for me. I shook my head. You came back for me first. Her eyes closed. For years, I had thought the worst thing Ruth ever taught me was that women had to endure pain to keep a family together. In the end, she taught me something else. People can change. But only after they stop defending the thing that is destroying them. I did not start dating. People asked. Hannah asked too often. Someone at work? No. The guy from the coffee shop? No. The divorced dad from Lucy's soccer team? Hannah. What? He has great shoulders. I'm not interested. For once, that was enough. I did not need another relationship to prove my life had started again. I had spent 7 years making decisions based on Daniel, then months making decisions against Daniel. Eventually, I wanted to make decisions that had nothing to do with him at all. That was freedom too. Sometimes I still thought about the morning of the surgery, the hospital bracelet, Daniel kissing my forehead, Ruth's trembling hands, the envelope, the cash, the key, the words. Take Lucy and go. For a long time, I believed that was the moment Ruth saved my life. I was wrong. She opened the door. I chose to walk through it. Then I chose to turn around. That part mattered. 7 years earlier, I had married into the Carter family believing love meant proving how much I was willing to sacrifice. By the end, I had almost given them a kidney, my money, my daughter, and whatever was left of myself. Ruth spent 38 years learning the same lesson the hard way. I spent 7. Lucy was 6. I hoped she would never have to learn it at all. One afternoon, nearly 18 months after the hospital, Lucy stood by the front door while Ruth and I were still talking in the kitchen. Mom, I'm coming. Grandma. Ruth called back, give me 1 minute. Lucy groaned dramatically. You always say that. Ruth looked at me. I picked up my car keys. My car. Registered in my name. Paid from my account. Ruth grabbed her coat. We walked toward the door together. No one asked where we were going. No one checked what I had spent. No one demanded to know when we would be back. No one needed to approve. Lucy opened the door. Finally, Ruth laughed. I looked at the two of them. Ruth had used the last of her courage to push my daughter and me out of the life that had trapped her for decades. I could have kept running. Instead, I turned around and brought her with us. And this time, when we walked away, all 3 of us knew one thing for certain. We were never going back.